Welcome to episode 67 of the Positive Unpublishing podcast. This podcast aims to inspire you with information to allow you to pursue your creative life with a smile on your face. I'm your host, Dr. Catherine Gaillet. Learn more about my work at makeeverythingfun.com. My dear guest today is Debra Poneman. For over 40 years, best-selling author and founder of Yes to Success, Debra has shared her system, now used by tens of thousands of people around the world, to create lives not only of success and abundance, but deep happiness, self-love, and lasting inner fulfillment. Known as the mentor to the mentors, Debra's students have used her teachings to become mega successful entrepreneurs, renowned transformational leaders, New York Times bestselling authors, millionaires, billionaires, even household names. Debra feels her greatest accomplishment is not only that she has taught so many people how to live their dreams, but also how to look in the mirror and love the person they see. Welcome to the show, Debra.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. I've been really looking forward to this.
It's always amazing to see you. And we were just talking in the pre-interview chat about this amazing time right now. And, you know, it's a challenging time with COVID and we've had this physical distancing and all that. And you have this like gold mine of information that actually you've been cultivating for decades. And so let's start back in the early 80s when you first launched Yes to Success and kind of tell us about the principles that you used to create this program.
Well, thank you for asking. It's one of my favorite subjects because I really believe that the principles that I use to create Yes to Success, anybody could use to create success in their lives. So sometimes it seems like I'm just talking about my own success stories, but there's such great nuggets in it. Because what happened was the decade of the 70s, don't go calculating how old I am. I know how old I am. But the decade of the 70s, I taught transcendental meditation and I became a TM teacher in the early 70s and I loved what I was doing. But at the end of the decade, I came to the realization that woman does not live by mantra alone. And I actually needed a little bit of money. So I decided that I was going to leave the meditation community I was living in. And I was going to go where the money was. And in my mind, that was Los Angeles. So I left my community. I moved to Los Angeles and I got a job as an investment advisor, which is a fancy name for saying that I hawked investments. Well, it was not me. Let's just put it that way. I was so not successful. But you know that expression, we make plans and God laughs. My plan was to make a lot of money and go back to teaching meditation. But one night, one of my colleagues invited me to a money seminar and I thought it was going to be on stocks and bonds and it was going to help me be more successful. And I walk in, it's at the learning annex and it's not the usual suits. It is the new age crowd. And this is 1980. And the guy is talking about the law of attraction. I had never heard this before. He says, your mind creates your reality. And he said, we are all like tuning forks. And if you are talking about how poor you are, how you'll never get out of debt, the economy is collapsing, you start vibrating like that and you attract more of that into your life. It's like, and then no matter what your financial situation is, if you talk about the abundance and prosperity that you see is coming towards you, you start vibrating. And if you're vibrating at a C or an E or a F sharp, like a tuning fork, you can't attract B flat. So like attracts like. And I thought that is so profound. And the whole night he's throwing out all of this stuff about how we are energetic beings. And I thought, you know what? This is why I came to LA. I'm going to teach that. And I did what any intelligent person would do. I went and quit my job the next day. And it's not like I was any kind of hero. Remember, I hadn't sold one investment. And I started studying the great masters of success and prosperity like Napoleon Hill and Wallace Wattles and Florence Shinn and Catherine Ponder. And I put together an amazing weekend seminar called Yes to Success. But here are the principles that I used. Okay, number one, an idea comes to you because you're supposed to manifest that idea. Okay, I believe that the creator, that's the God of your understanding, needs certain things manifested on the planet. So the creator looks for a worthy vehicle and whispers that idea. One person has the idea to teach happiness. Another person has the idea to start an acupuncture school. Another person has the idea to be an investment advisor for young families. Everybody has a different idea because the creation needs all of those things to work. So what got whispered to my ear was start a success seminar company. Okay. And if you don't, and I know people who are listening have had this experience, you had a great idea, you didn't do anything about it. A few years later, you see somebody who did, you go, that was my idea. Well, guess what? The creator gave you first dibs, but you didn't do anything about it. The creator needed that manifested on the planet. So she had to go to the second stringer. Okay. So the second principle that I use, so I knew because of all of the great masters that I studied, that idea came to me because I was supposed to be the vehicle to manifest it on the planet for those concept of success to be spoken through me. The second thing is, as soon as you have an idea that fills a need or answers a gap in society, don't go around telling everybody what you're going to do. Because two reasons. What is sacred should be kept secret, and your precious ideas are sacred. Two things will happen if you go around telling everybody. Number one, you're letting the steam out of the kettle. Every time you tell somebody, it's less likely you're going to do it. Because people will say, oh, that's a brilliant idea. That's so great. Well, you already got the accolades. So it takes the edge off, So you got to keep the steam in the kettle. Don't tell anybody. And then it has to burst forth in your idea. People say to me, oh, but I have a mastermind group. Well, if there are maybe one or two people that you absolutely know 1,000% will keep your secret, and maybe you need to talk to them because it involves them. But other than that, no, don't go around telling everybody what you're going to do, because chances are you're going to run up against the discouragement committee. And those are those people who tell you exactly why your idea is really dumb. It's not going to work. And then that seed is just crushed before you even have a chance to manifest it. And even if you do continue with the manifestation, you always have that doubt. Is it really a stupid idea? So-and-so said it was really a dumb idea. Then, so you don't tell anybody, it's yours, the creator whispered it to you. And then what you have to do is not wait until you think you're ready, because you will never think you're ready. There will always be loose ends. People say to me, oh, I'm going to do it when the divorce is final. I'm going to do it when the kids are out of the house. I'm going to do it when I get the inheritance. I'm going to do it when I finish my degree. No, you're not going to do it then. You're going to do it when the creator whispers it to you, because that's when the energy of the universe is behind you. And if you're afraid, just take a step from which there's no turning back. I was afraid. I was 29 years old. I drove a beat up Chevy Bel Air that my aunt had left me when she died, and it was 10 years old. I was broke. My only degree was from Maharishi International University in the science of creative intelligence. And I was going to go out and teach people how to be successful. But I was the product of my product. So I had to go take a step for which there was no turning back. And for me, that was putting up posters, because that's how we advertised in 1980. I put up posters. The discouragement committee showed up and said, oh, Deb, come on. Your mind creates your reality. You're getting really, girl. But the posters were already up. There was nothing I could do about it. I was giving this presentation at the Santa Monica Public Library, and when I walked in, it was standing room only. And as you know, the rest is history. Within a few short years, my seminars were being taught in 7 countries on 4 continents, and that was decades before international communication was made instantaneous. It was phones with curly cords. There weren't even fax machines in 1980. But it was an idea whose time has come, and I used the principles that I had learned and that now I teach to create that success.
Amazing, Deborah. And so, folks that are watching and listening, you're going to have to go to the show notes to see the principles. I did take notes, and they're amazing. But Deborah, I pull out these like fun nuggets, and you actually already used the word nugget, which I thought was really like serendipitous. But I just sort of summarize some fun things along the way to break it up. And the first one is that we make plans and God laughs. I just thought that was so worth repeating. Number two is that we are like tuning forks that have these frequencies and that we attract like frequencies, which is really important for people to remember. Because if we're like Eeyore and we're down, I love Winnie the Pooh and the whole bit, but if we're just kind of vibrating that, don't wonder why you have a bunch of Eeyores showing up in your own life. Number three is that your ideas aren't random. And I love this. And again, that kind of goes into all the principles that you talked about. And one is just worth, because it's controversial, Deborah, this idea that what is sacred should be kept secret. And you talked about how, we go to our masterminds, we go to our friends, we go to our colleagues, and you're just expressing some caution there in terms of, I love that idea of, or that metaphor of losing a little bit of steam. I have an Instant Pot I've been using a lot lately, but it's basically, I love making hard-boiled eggs in there because they peel so well. But what you're saying is that it's really, you actually do lose a little bit of that energy by going and blah, 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 talking about it all the time. So it's really interesting. It's controversial. And you always hear people say, oh, bring this to, an innovation center idea, or bring this to a mastermind, or bring this to your mentors. And there is more, there's a lot of advice out there about kind of hashing out the ideas and doing discovery work, but to hone the idea. But the idea that what is sacred should be kept secret is amazing. It's interesting.
Well, one of the reasons why people say share it with somebody, because then they'll hold you accountable. No one ever holds you accountable. Come on, get real. Has anybody ever held you accountable? My friend Janet Atwin and I were always like, okay, if you ever do this, you have to pay me. Every time you do it, you have to give me $100. We do it. We never give each other $100. You are the only one who can hold you accountable. So don't give me that accountable thing, because it just doesn't happen. If you don't have the meditation, if you don't have the motivation inside, nobody's going to hold you accountable. So people have all of these reasons that they have to share with everybody. Here's the thing. When you plant the seed, when it's right at the beginning, you have to keep a seed safe and warm. You don't keep on uncovering it to see how it's doing. Let it sprout and let it become a strong, tiny plant. When I started my company, people were like, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? I said, I'll tell you when the time is right. And then when it was a strong plant and I had already put up the posters and rented the room at the Santa Monica Public Library, then when the discouragement committee showed up, it was already a strong plant that could not be knocked over by the wind of opinion. So there is a point where you could then go ahead and share with people, but not when it's a tiny seed. Just work on it on your own, garden it on your own.
It's so interesting. And listeners and viewers can read Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. And she kind of talks about how she kissed an idea on the cheek to a fellow author because the universe wanted her actually to write this book about the Amazon jungle. And she just wasn't ready at that time. And so I love the ideas that I love the concept that our ideas aren't random, that they're actually something that we are asked to manifest. And if we're not going to do it, well, first of all, we shouldn't complain that was our idea, right? Whether it's you're going to kiss it on the cheek to somebody else, or you're going to, you're going to blow it on the wind. The universe, if it's going to manifest something, I love that it invites you. And if you don't accept the invitation, it's going to invite someone else.
Yes, absolutely. And here's another point. A lot of times people say, oh, I can't write a book on success. There have been so many. Yeah, there have been so many. But do you realize that there are people who are waiting to hear the message from you? Your unique angle, the vehicle that you are. They could relate to you better than they could relate to the 10,000 other people who talk about success or happiness or power or passion. There are people who are born to have you as their teacher. So don't stop yourself because other people have done the same thing. And the other thing is that, if somebody else does what I actually had this experience happen to me. I had an idea to write a book and I told one person about it, only one. All right. And a few days later, she was in a conversation with somebody who said they had had the same idea, but they were a little bit further along. And she came back to me. She says, "You can't do it. So and so's doing it." If I hadn't told her, I would never have known that that other person was doing it, and I would have written that book. But what happened was when she came back, she said, "You can't do it. She's doing it already. She has better contacts than you." Discouragement committee, and I never wrote that book. So that's what can happen. I had it in real life.
So interesting. And thank you for your authenticity and vulnerability. I mean, you're such a mega superstar, and I admire you for so many reasons. And one of the reasons that I really listened to your particular advice and your story, Debra, is because you have done what many other women and men have not done. And that is to become mega successful and to be a rock star, ultra connected mom. So I know that you have these adorable kids and your family is so important to you. I know that you have learned a lot of lessons from the time that you took off to be with your kids. And I really admire that. Like I have always just felt so magnetically attracted to your story because I believe that there are a lot of lessons in the multifaceted being that you are. And one of those really important facets is that you're a mom.
Yeah. Well, I'll share a bit of that story because I actually have a part that you might not have even heard. And as you know, at the height of my success, I was in negotiations for my own daytime TV talk show. As I said, my seminars are being taught by my reps around the world. I personally taught in 12 major US cities, and a lot of today's most renowned transformational leaders were my students at the time. Actually, Marcy Shimoff, who was my co-founder of Your Year of Miracles, was my secretary. She wrote Chicken Soup for the Woman's Soul and the Mother's Soul and All the Souls and Happy for No Reason. She was my secretary in those days. My Yes to Success book was in the hands of a New York publisher. I was about to have my own daytime TV talk show, and Janet Atwood, the founder of the Passion Test, was my personal assistant. She was actually at the meetings with me when I was meeting with the producers. And then really at the height of my success, I gave everything up because my daughter was born. And I teach people that if you follow your heart, it is the only guaranteed path to success. And if you follow your mind, you know what? Your mind is kind of filled with hurts of the past and what other people have said. And you can get really off track if you go with the rational reasoning mind. But if you just tune into your intuition, which lives in the heart. And when my daughter was born, I took one look at her and I thought, okay, I teach people to follow their hearts, and my heart is right here. And I didn't want to leave that little girl to go to the bathroom, let alone leave her every morning at 5:30 to tape a TV show or to go on some book tour. And I just decided within a very short time after her birth that I was going to become a full-time mom at home. And there I remained for 21 years. And because then, my son was born 3 years later. And I remember I was supposed to do a series of presentations in Southeast Asia, and the promoter, Chiang from Singapore, when the baby was born, he called me. He said, I heard the baby was born. Let's get this tour on the books. I said, Chiang, you're going to have to call me back in 18 years. And everybody said, have you gone out of your mind? And I said, absolutely. Right out of my mind and right into my heart. And I'm telling you guys, whenever you need to make a decision, small or large, physically move out of your head and move your attention to your heart. You can even put your hand on your heart and just ask your heart, what is the truth? And my truth was so clearly that I was going to be a mom at home. And the story, people always say, did you ever doubt your decision? And I say, absolutely. Of course I did. If we don't doubt, then we're not human. the humans, that's what we do. We doubt. And when my students, one by one, were becoming New York Times bestselling authors and mega successful entrepreneurs and mega successful transformational leaders, and I was home knee deep in dirty diapers, you don't think I had some doubts? But the truth is that if you are true to yourself, all of your success will be waiting for you. And I wouldn't have given up those 21 years for anything. And some of the greatest principles that I learned about how to create a successful life, I learned from my kids. Do you know, my daughter is a chiropractor. She's a great healer. And whenever I have anything just off a little bit, I get to call my daughter. And she lives in Seattle and I live here. She lives in Seattle. If you need a great chiropractor, she's in Issaquah. But anyway, she's my rock in terms of my health. And my son, who we know from a very, very interesting way, because your sister-in-law lived a few blocks away from me and produced all of our neighborhood huge, gigantic productions, plays. And my son tried out for Bye Bye Birdie and had never acted or sang or danced or nothing in his life. And he got the role of Birdie. And he was very close with Judy Kemp. And she's a gorgeous, wonderful lady. Anyway, can I tell you the principle that I learned from my son about how to create success?
I absolutely, yes. And you'll have to send me the link to your daughter's practice in Seattle so we can put that in the show notes.
Oh, that would be fantastic. She is really, I've been going to chiropractors for 50 years. And I really, honestly, she is one of the best, if not the best. She's so good. She has network chiropractic. Anyway.
Oh yeah. Love that. Okay.
Network. She's so good. Yeah. Anyway, she's very intuitive. When she was little and I was sick, I used to get migraines back then. I don't anymore, but when I would get sick, I'd say, bring Deanna. And Fred would bring her in and she would just lay hands on my head and take my headaches away. So she has that natural healing ability. And so she brings that to her network chiropractic practice. Anyway, so my son, from the time that he was literally practically born, loved basketball. As a matter of fact, before he could even walk, he would hold his hand up on the hold himself up with one hand, and he would shoot baskets with the other in the little basketball hoop that we had bought him. Anyway, his love of basketball, when he was a little boy, when he was 5 years old, his 5-year birthday party, all the other kids are having their birthday parties at Chuck E. Cheese. He insisted that his birthday party be at Michael Jordan's restaurant in Chicago. And then afterwards, we had to go to the United Center for a game. The other 5-year-olds had no idea what hit them, but he loved basketball. When he was a freshman at Evanston High School, he made the A team, but he was the only white kid, and decidedly white kids cannot jump. So he went to every game then when he sat on the bench, but he went to the freshman, the varsity, junior varsity, and he realized that he had an eye for talent, that he could pick out the kids, even in high school, who are going to be drafted by the best colleges and who would even go into the NBA one day. So he started a basketball website, and he became the go-to scout for college coaches for high school talent in the Chicago area. As a matter of fact, when he was 16, there is a full-page article about him in Sports Illustrated, Why College Hoops Coaches Seek the Advice of a 16-year-old Scout. Then what he started doing is he started making films, and he would send them out to college coaches, these promising young athletes, and he was starting to generate a lot of college scholarships for these kids. And one day he comes to me, he says, Mom, you know what? These Division I kids don't need me. I mean, he actually discovered Anthony Davis, who's on the Lakers now. If you Google Daniel Poneman and Anthony Davis, you'll see the whole story. But he said, Derrick Rose, they would have been discovered anyway. That's his theory. But the Division II kids, the kids who would probably just go to junior college, a 2-year college, a local college, if they don't get a scholarship, Mom, they're going to end up flipping burgers or worse. And I want to help those kids. So he said, I'm going to start a showcase that's free, because you could be in a showcase and be seen by college coaches, but it's like $150 to $250. And these kids don't have that kind of money in the inner city of Chicago. So we never discouraged our kids, no matter how crazy their ideas were. We encouraged them to use their own best thinking. If you think it's a good idea, I am not going to be the discouragement committee. You go for it. So he started a basketball showcase, the Daniel Poneman basketball showcase. And his first showcase had 10 coaches and about 35 kids. And his most recent had 350 kids and 150 college coaches. And to date, he's generated over $50 million in college scholarships for kids in the inner city of Chicago. And first of all, don't ever be the discouragement committee, no matter how big a person's idea seems. And especially if it's your kids, say to them, well, what do you think? What's your best thinking about this? And whatever it is, I'm here to support you. And if they come to you for advice, always say, well, what do you think? Because they will come up with brilliant ideas. But one thing that happened, and this is something that has stayed with me forever, he was generating millions of dollars in scholarships for the kids, and he wasn't taking a penny for himself. He had a nonprofit, which is called Shot in the Dark Foundation. And so he's generating all of this money for scholarships. And I said to him, Daniel, honey, isn't there any way that you can make a little bit of money for yourself? Because he wouldn't take a penny from his nonprofit. And he said, Mom, just be patient. I'm generating relationship capital. And I said, okay, sweetie, I get that. He says, just be patient. You'll see where this will go. So then months would pass, and I'll throw in something else that people might be horrified, but he actually was brilliant. This is a kid who stayed up all night and still got like 32 on his ACT and hardly ever went to school and still got straight A's, one of those kinds of kids. And in his senior year, he came to me, he said, Mom, I'm dropping out of school. And I said, why? And he said, because I don't care about calculus. I don't care about physics. I'm never going to use that. But the kids in the hood need me. And if I could take that time to get them more scholarships, I think it's a better expenditure of my time. And I said, you're not going to get an argument out of me. And my friends are like, oh, you let him what? And I said, yeah, I completely agreed with him. I think our school system is completely screwed up, doesn't teach any life skills. And he's an avid reader. He always read autobiographies and biographies of great people. That was his inspiration. He was a self-learner. I said, absolutely. I'm with you 100%. So anyway, but still he wasn't making money. So as the months would go by and many months would go by, and I say, Daniel, honey, hello, can't you make a little bit of money? You're sleeping on my couch. She says, Mom, remember, I'm building relationship capital. Fast forward about a year later, he decides he wants to make a movie about basketball in Chicago and how it's the only way out. It's called Shot in the Dark. And one of the people who he had built relationship capital with gave him $400,000 to make his movie, which was nominated for an Emmy for Best Long-Form Sports Documentary. And then a few years after that, he decided that he wanted to continue his nonprofit, but also start his own athlete management firm, which is called Beyond Athlete Management, beyond.am. And one of the people who loved the nonprofit work he did, one of the wealthiest families in the U.S., you could see who it is on his website, gave him, I don't even know how many millions of dollars to start his own athlete management company. He's only 20, actually, no, he's 28 now. And he has 7 agents now working under him. He's the youngest. They all are like 20, 30 years older than him. But he just used all of his relationship capital. So here's the end of the story. So I said to him, Daniel, that idea of relationship capital, it's really changed my life. And he says, this is a couple years ago, and he says, Mom, what are you talking about? I learned it from you. I said, you did? And he said, yeah. What you always taught in Yes to Success was that you have to treat everybody as the most important person in the world, no matter the color of their skin, no matter their age, no matter their gender, no matter if they're wearing weird clothes or crooked glasses. The person standing in front of you is always the most important person in the world at that moment, and you give them your full attention. Mom, you taught me that. So I always did that for everybody. Some of these kids in the hood who are now in the NBA, I mean, some of them give him tens of thousands of dollars now for his nonprofit. He said he learned that from me. He said, Mom, I remember you said, just give them your full attention and don't be looking around the room to see if there's somebody more important to talk to. And this is the thing he remembered. He said, I remember when you quoted from Kabbalah, which is the Jewish mystical text, that God says, if you do my work for me, I will do your work for you. And I use the example, if you treat the person in front of you as the child of God that they are, and not look around the room, don't worry. I'll find you the best business partners. I'll find you the best connections. I'll do your work for you if you do my work for me. And treating people well and like they're important, that's God's work.
That's so beautiful, Debra. That is so beautiful. And I love the update on Daniel. Like, I have been following what he's been up to, and I loved his nonprofit and all the scholarships that he was finding the athletes. And then the movie, I was like, cheering him on. But this whole thing about the Beyond agency that he has and all these folks working for him, that's new news to me. So thank you. And how he took your teachings. And I love that as your son, he's able to even say to you, Mom, like, to give you credit. Because you know how kids are like, oh, I didn't learn that from you. I don't know if your kids do that to you, but your kids obviously are, and I was getting chills when you were telling me this story of how, this time, basically this 21 years, like, your kids were your number one clients, and look what they're doing.
But I'll tell you something really interesting about that. So, I have my business, Yes to Success, and then sometimes I have mentoring where I do private mentoring for small groups. And I had a mentoring group and we had a retreat, and our retreat was in Chicago. So we invited Daniel to come to lunch with us. And two things happen at that lunch. One, I'll tell you, that has to do with what we're talking about here. And then I'll tell you something else he said that was so brilliant. One of the women I was mentoring said to him, what was it like growing up with your mom and your dad? Because he's not my husband anymore, but he's still one of my very dearest friends. Daniel's dad is so brilliant, Harvard graduate, knows everything about business, and a really, really, really good-hearted guy. And anyway, they said, what was it like growing up with your parents? I mean, was your mom always spouting to you about, this is what Napoleon Hill says, and this is what Stephen Covey says, and this is what, and he thought about it for a minute. He says, you know what? I don't ever remember either of them ever quoting that stuff to me. And then the woman said, well, isn't that why you're so successful? Because you followed those principles? And then he said, no, it wasn't because I followed those principles. It's because I watched the way they lived their lives. And it's such an important thing because, your actions speak so loud, I can't hear what you're saying. And especially for parents, these kids, they see everything. And if we tell them or we tell anybody to do a certain thing and we're not doing it, it diminishes their belief in us and it diminishes their trust in us. And he said, this is great. He said, the only thing I remember is that one time my parents went out. He tells the story. My parents went out. They said they were going to dinner and to a movie. So I decided I'd have a few friends over, and it turned into a gigantic Home Alone party. And then they decided not to go to the movies and just come home after dinner. So we walk in and there's this house full of kids, and there's beer and there's this and there's that. And the kids just scrambled. And then my friend said, oh my gosh, you must have really gotten punished. And he said, yes. And he told them the punishment. And his punishment was, number one, he had to clean the house until it was spotless. And number two, he had to read the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Successful Teens, cover to cover, annotate, and give us a book report. And when he was done with that, then he could go out again.
Oh my gosh, Debra, I made my son read that book as well, and he had to do blog posts on it. And I have to just tell listeners and viewers that Debra and I both, she's there right now, and I grew up in like the John Hughes movies neighborhood. So when Debra was talking about Daniel's party, like picture the John Hughes, like the 16 candles and, the people all over the lawn and like, oh my God, Risky Business was also filmed in that in that area of the north suburbs
actually,
of Chicago.
both of those movies used a screenshot as the establishing shot of my high school in Skokie for those two movies. So Evanston, that whole North Shore area, yes, picture it. Go watch those movies. You'll know where they grew up.
Well, that is the coolest story, Debra, that was, we both used Stephen Covey's work as a way to teach our parents, or to teach our kids. But at the same time, what you said earlier about how these actions speak louder than words, we can give our kids book reports and books to read and things like that. But it's really what you said before about how you were living your lives was the most important way to teach. So I've got a bunch of other nuggets. I'm not even going to go there because I know we want to go through, how you came back into the workforce after your important work with your clients, i.e. your kids. And then you had this multi-million-dollar business, the Your Year of Miracles, and you stepped away from that. And I know there's some interesting listening to your intuition messages and nuggets there. But I wanted to make sure we save some time to talking about how listeners and viewers can get involved in this brand new launch of Yes to Success, because it's such an exciting time. And this interview will be coming out right around the time when the doors will be open for people to learn more about Yes to Success and how you're doing it live and giving people you're blessing people with your live presence. So how does it sound to kind of create a journey along the lines of you're returning back to work after 21 years and then building a multi-million-dollar business and then having this intuition to move on to something else, and then talking a little bit about this June timeframe, 2020, of how Yes to Success is going to have a new, I think, amazing, beautiful explosion of its next version in life.
Yes. Well, thank you. And, it's so interesting because that principle of treating everybody as the most important person in the world plays into this whole story, because one of the things that Daniel remembered was that one of the people I treated as the most important person in the world was Marcy Shimoff. She was just a little college student at the time. She came and took my Yes to Success seminar. It blew her mind. So she just came up to me afterwards and she said, I want to work for you. I said, but you're in college. She goes, I'm going to quit and I want to work for you full time. I want to just learn everything you have to teach. And I said, well, maybe you should discuss it with your parents. But she ended up quitting. She was actually in graduate school getting her MBA from UCLA, and she quit to be my executive assistant. And anyway, then I promoted her to vice president, even though she was still my only employee at the time. But the reason why that's so significant is because I did give her her first speaking opportunity when I became ill. She had to go teach a seminar or no one was going to get paid that month. And after my 21 years of being home with the kids, she heard that I was coming back into the speaking world, and she just grabbed me and she said, I have this idea, a 1-year mentoring program where we teach women how to create miraculous lives. Will you do it with me? So right out of the chute, we just hunkered down and we created this program, and it was a $1 million launch from day one. And we were together for 5 years. We had a blast. We created, really, it's a phenomenon. And around the middle of the 4th year, but definitely into the 5th year, I realized that I wanted to move on. And it wasn't that I didn't love Your Year of Miracles, but I'm a creative. And what I like to do is create content. I get lots of downloads from the ethers, wherever they come from, I don't know. And it's, the God of your understanding whispering it in your ear. This is what the world needs to learn right now. And we had already created the content for your year of miracles. The first year, we refined it the second year, and we really refined it the third year. And there was no reason to change it because it was so effective. But for me, it wasn't fun anymore because I didn't get to wake up and create content. I just got to repeat the content. And again, it's brilliant. It changes lives. But for me, I wasn't being true to myself. And I teach people that you have to be true to yourself in alignment with who you really are. And I'm a creator. So I told Marcy that I was going to leave. And this is another principle of success. And she said, no, you can't. You're the only one who can do this with me. She was so cute. I said, but Mars, it's not making my heart sing anymore. This is what we teach. She goes, make your heart sing. Because she didn't want me to leave. And then I said, okay, let me think about it. And then I came back again and I said, I really, really have to. No, you're the only person. I said, Mars, remember what we teach. When you do what's best for yourself, it will always be what's best for everybody else. And she says, yes, except not in this situation. We laugh about it so much now. And I said, we have to trust that if I leave, somebody even more spectacular will take my place and I'll move on to even more wonderful things. So reluctantly, she agreed. And then the amazing Sue Morter showed up and the amazing Lisa Garr. And she got two for the price of one to take my place. And they brought their new kind of knowledge, Sue, because she's a doctor, and Lisa, because she's the premier interviewer. And your Year of Miracles is going stronger than ever. So we have to trust that if we do what's best for ourselves, it will always be what's best for everybody else, and only 100% of the time. So, and I had to believe that if that impulse for me to move on, and people are like, are you nuts? It's a multi-million-dollar franchise. You are freaking walking away. And I mean, the truth is, because I was the founder and the creator, I do get some residual income, but yeah, essentially I was walking away. But you have to listen to those impulses of your intuition. And mine said, start yes to success again. Because I'll tell you, Kath, I started that company 40 years ago this year. It was 1980. And still, I kid you not a week goes by that something doesn't happen, that one of my old students, even from the 80s, doesn't get in touch with me, or I bump into them and they tell me how that seminar completely changed the trajectory of their life. I mean, I help people become millionaires. I had a guy that came up to me who was a billionaire, a household name in conscious capitalism. It just happened. I was at a Mother Mira, like where you get blessings darshan from this Holy Mother. And this guy came up to me and said, are you Debra Olson? I said, I was back in the 1980s. That was another one of my names. I've had a few. He said, I took your Yes to Success seminar. And he told me the story that when he came, his wife had left him. He had just declared bankruptcy. His business had gone under. He was depressed. He was practically suicidal. Somebody told him to take my seminar. And he said it was a last resort. He said, truly, if this didn't work, he might have even ended it all. And I'm like, whoa. And then he said, but I took your seminar and I made the commitment to use your principles for 40 days, like you tell everybody to. And my life turned around so dramatically that I met my soulmate. We now have 6 grandchildren. I started a business that I sold when I was in my early 50s, and I could live for the rest of my life. My health improved. Oh, he had also a severe health concern. My health improved. My depression left, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But here's the great part about the story. So I was so thrilled. And then his wife came up to me and she hugged me and thanked me and said she had heard so much about Yes to Success. He walks away and my friend Marsha says to me, you don't know who that is, do you? I said, yes, what was his name? Peter. It's Peter who took my seminar like in the 1980s. She says, yeah, it's Peter. It's Peter. And then she said his last name. And it was a name that most of us would know, and I'm not going to reveal the last name because I told all that confidential stuff, but I went and looked it up on the internet, and he had sold his company for billions. So I could say that I know one person became a billionaire, but most importantly, what I teach in Yes to Success, the reason why I'm bringing it back, it's going to contain all of my tried and true principles. Deepak Chopra was one of my students. It was at my seminar where he stood up and declared that he was going to write a book that showed the relationship between Eastern and Western medicine. Phil Town, who wrote Rule Number One New York Times bestselling author, Steve Farber from Extreme Leadership, Janet Atwood from The Passion Test. They were all my students in the 80s. And, but anyway, I still teach all of the tried and true principles that they use to create their success, but also all of the new information that's come through me in the last few years that is so pertinent to 2020 and anybody who wants to create success in their lives, no matter what it is that you want to manifest. Maybe you want to manifest the $1 million and the house and the car and then this and that. And maybe all you want is to be able to, as we said earlier, look in the mirror and love the person you are seeing. Maybe you just want to know what your highest truth is so that you could align with it. Maybe you just want to know how to use the power of your mind to create your reality. I teach all of it, and it will all be in my course that I'm teaching 10 weeks online beginning in June.
And Debra, you are bringing so much energy, your, magical energy to this process. Like I can feel it as you're talking about it. And I know a little bit about what you're doing as far as like creating all this free content as we move into the launch of the course and bringing everyone together. We talked earlier, or you mentioned one of the fun nuggets as being that, there's ideas that are to be manifested through us. And you are truly taking this seriously and playfully and amazingly in terms of manifesting this. And you mentioned some of the things that people can get out of it. Like maybe people are looking for more financial abundance in their lives. Maybe they're looking for more self-love and acceptance. Maybe they're looking for that beautiful relationship that they've been dreaming about manifesting and to create that support system. Maybe they want to create a new business. So there's all these different things. It doesn't sound like there's one specific person in mind. It really is for a unique, customized manifestation for that own individual. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. There are 10 modules, and like one of everybody's favorites is the financial money module, where I teach very, very specific principles, which obviously people have used to great success, how to get rid of what's blocking you from having the financial abundance that you want. It's about time that you had it. And these principles are absolutely timeless and they work. But I also teach a module on how to absolutely love yourself. There's even a module on how to know when to hold on and when to let go, because one of the reasons why people don't get what they want is because they just hold on to things that need to be let go of so that they could create the space for something better to come in. But I teach absolute techniques and concepts on how to do that. I even have a module on how you can be the greatest contribution to the world, because people want to know that right now, because we feel helpless. We see what's going on in the world and we feel like we're just one little person. What can we do? There is a lot you can do just on the level of energy. There's a lot that you can do without even leaving your home. And I have a whole module on how to be a world changer. And it's not, but it also has to do with sacred activism, which is activism that has nothing to do with pushing against or making anybody wrong. It's based on Mother Teresa's quote. When she said she wouldn't go to an anti-war rally, she said, when there is a pro-peace rally, then invite me and I'll be there. So I have a whole module on sacred activism. It's so rich because really success and what happens is that when you create that inner success, the spiritual success, the energetic success, then it's simple to, I mean, I was driving that beat up old Chevy Bel Air, and within 3 years, I was driving a gorgeous Mercedes. I was living in a little apartment in Santa Monica with hand-me-down furniture. And within a few years, I was living in a 4,000 square foot house on 5 acres. And so manifesting that stuff becomes pretty effortless when you start from the inside out. So we do it all.
I love it. And I really want to encourage people to think about what they're feeling in their bodies as we talk through this. Like if there's a little bit of excitement, a little bubbling, a little curiosity, we'll provide links in the show notes. And I'm also going to give Debra a chance to talk about more places that people can learn about her work. I do want to say, though, that your work is so actionable. Like I think of you, Debra, all the time. Sometimes it's this once a year thing that we do, and sometimes it's more often. But that whole clutter clearing thing that you do, that you teach about, like you're, so if somebody's listening to this and they're thinking, sacred activism, what does that mean? Is this actionable? Like you're teaching, your stuff is so actionable. Like I said, I think of you all the time. We set aside a certain amount of days, and you have to be consistent, because if you miss a day, then you have to start over. And we clutter clear a certain number of items, and it is all based on like sacred geometry and math. And I love that. We get really, really serious about it. And I've even like blogged about it, where I took a picture of the befores and the afters of like how much your work has changed my life. But it's inner work to the outer. And then I also like some of the outer work. Like I know you work on goal setting, and then the clutter clearing is sort of like creating the space around you so that you can do that inner work. Anyway, I'm just giving some specific examples and shout outs about how actionable and transformational your teachings and work, that how amazing they are.
And thank you so much for saying that, because we even have a module on time management. Because this is my tweetable moment: success cannot flow through disorder. So if you're wondering why your success is not flowing to you in the way that you would like, you need to create more order in your environment. And I base it a lot on feng shui and on Vastu, which predates feng shui. It comes out of India. And the quadrants in your home, which the relationship quadrant and the money quadrant. And if there's clutter in those quadrants, we clean it up during that module so you can get that success and prosperity flowing. But I even tell people how to organize their desks. If you want to know how granular I get, we not only set lifetime goals and monthly goals and weekly and the whole time management system, which is the simplest system, because if it's not simple, people aren't going to do it. But even how to organize your desk so that the greatest success can flow through. So it is really very spiritual, very energetic, and as you say, Kath, extremely practical.
Well, I love it. And I was saying that I should have everyone really listen to their bodies and what they're feeling in their bodies. Like my body has already told me that I need to be part of this. Like I have learned already from you so much. But I know that there's this momentum right now with what you're doing, and I can feel the energy that you're putting into this. Also with this whole concept of time management right now, with what we've experienced with COVID 2020, we are in this very challenging time, but it's also, they say, with adversity, there's opportunity. And I think as we relate to time, we are changing how we relate to time. So what a time, not to use that word too many times, but what a moment in which to re-examine and really up-level our relationship to time.
Yes. And the one thing that I teach people who are in the midst of anxiety and fear, I always say that in relationship to time, if you're feeling anxiety, the only question you have to ask is, am I okay right now? Because fear and anxiety is always due to you projecting into the future. And if you're listening to this right now and you just ask yourself the question, am I okay right at this moment? Guys, if you're listening to this on your smartphone or your computer, you're pretty okay right now. I mean, you look at the rest of the world. If you just had your green drink and you're sleeping with a roof over your head, you are okay. And your okayness is what is going to contribute to the world going in the right direction. Your anxiety, which actually does spread out from you into your environment, is what's going to contribute to not okayness. And in my seminar, I teach a lot of other ways to get to that centered place. I teach breath techniques and other meditation techniques so that people can get to that place where they do feel peaceful, where they do feel centered, where they do feel all is well, and they could be a contribution to the world in that way. And one of the things that you mentioned earlier that I want to make sure that we go back to is that if somebody does go to my website, should I say what it is? Where they
absolutely.
Find If they go to my website, which is Yes to Success, and it's not the number 2, it's YESTO, yes2success.com, you'll see that there's a free ebook. It's very prominent, and which is called The 5 Keys to Living a Life of True and Lasting Success. And it is a fabulous ebook. It's not just some kind of lost leader that I threw together. It is a great ebook. And if you sign up for the ebook, then I will notify you when I'm doing all my free content, because I am doing 3 free videos and and one is on aligning with your highest truth, one is on using the power of your mind, one is on healing your heart. And then I'm doing a free 90-minute what's it called? Webinar. That's what it's called, webinar. That's the 5 pillars to a life of true success or ultimate success. And that's 90 minutes live and lots of time for Q&A. So much free. Then I have a Yes-a-thon free where I'm interviewing Marianne Williamson and Catherine Woodward Thomas and Marcy, of course, and Janet Atwood, of course, and Sonia Riccati and a bunch of wonderful thought leaders, and that's free. So don't feel that you go to my website only so that you have to sign up for the course. I mean, of course, I would love if you did, but lots of free content that you'll get when you download the ebook. Then all the free content will come to you.
So amazing. Okay, so I'll put those links in the show note. But again, 5 keys, 5 pillars, like Yes-a-thon. Like it sounds like so much fun. Yes2success.com. Debra, you are such an amazing mentor, teacher, friend, guide. It's been such an honor to be with you today. And again, yes2success.com. Anything else you'd like to share with our listeners so they can continue to follow in your inspiration and work?
Yes. Well, I'd like to share that I am really glad that the Creator whispered in your ear to do this podcast, because you are touching so many lives and changing so many lives. And I am so glad that when the Creator whispered it in your ear, you took it and ran and didn't wait until you were ready, and all the other things that we've talked about. And thank you for allowing me to be a guest and to hold the space and create this platform for me and so many others to share our ideas, because even if you get one nugget from what I've shared or any of your other guests and you put them into action, just one little step, you have to climb to the top of the mountain one step at a time. So don't feel like you have to do everything that I shared during this podcast. Pick one thing that really struck you and incorporate it into your life and see what happens. I think magic will unfold.
Thank you so much. And I think there's like 7 nuggets plus all these principles and lessons. So I love your idea of just taking one at a time, folks. And thank you for being such an inspiration, Debra.
Thank you.